Hello, my name is Kayla O'Doran, and this is my Global Leadership Reflection Project. This reflection will address each of the 10 key behaviors that define great global leaders. The behaviors include cultural self-awareness, inviting the unexpected, results through relationships, frame shifting, expanding ownership, developing future leaders, adapting and adding value, core values and flexibility, influence across boundaries, and third-way solutions. These behaviors are paired to create 5 underlying themes: seeing differences, closing the gap, opening the system, preserving balance, and establishing solutions. In 50 years, if all insects were destroyed, life would cease to exist. If all humans were destroyed, life would flourish. Apparently, our friends in nature have much more figured out than we do. Let us take a look at how animals demonstrate these 10 global leadership qualities and see how we can apply these behaviors to global leadership and education. Here you see that the behaviors and themes of great global leaders have been replaced with animals and habitats. We will be exploring how these animals have been paired to represent the 10 behaviors and how we can translate their actions to purposeful behaviors in our own context and education. Sit back and enjoy the ride as we take a journey to these 5 habitats and see what we can learn from our observations of the animals within them. The first habitat we will be passing through is a suburb. Within the suburb, we will be observing a stray dog and a gorilla. Throughout this habitat, we will be observing the behavior of seeing differences. Seeing differences is the first piece of effective global leadership. We, as global leaders, must be able to use our knowledge base and past experiences in order to identify differences between cultures and their respective solutions to problems. Of course, a global leader must not have only had experiences and knowledge in leadership. These experiences and skills acquired must come from a vast array of sources and places. A global leader cannot stay physically in the same place and expect to be adept at this sort of identification. For example, are we aware of the distinct orientations, such as individualism versus collectivism, or universalism versus particularism, that are inherent to our culture? Are we aware of those that correspond with other cultures? Let's observe the specific processes necessary to be able to see the differences, as they are modeled by the stray dog and the gorilla. The stray dog is our model animal for cultural self-awareness because of several of his outstanding qualities. In the suburb habitat, the stray dog is certainly more welcome in some homes than others. Despite feeling unwelcome or out of place at times, he eats, sleeps, and interacts with the locals that do accept him. The dog knows he is coming from the outside and is humble and gracious in his new environment. To him, success is based on, and is only possible through, the relationships he forms. He strives to be pleasing to his client base, his new family members. Like the stray dog, global leaders may find themselves feeling out of place in new territory. This certainly does not stop a great global leader from pushing for success, but the global leader changes his approach as he comes to understand the culture. In order to better understand the culture, the global leader eats and interacts with the local people. The global leader is aware that he comes into the organization as an outsider, so he enters with a spirit of humility and willingness to adapt to the culture in which he finds himself. The global leader makes a point to form relationships with his colleagues and other members of the culture in order to learn and be successful with his client base. How does cultural self-awareness apply to global leaders in education? The important thing is for our old dogs to be willing to learn some new tricks. Cultural self-awareness is not solely a quality for those who travel in their leadership role. When educational leaders' styles are foreign to those who are following, the leader must be the one to adjust his style. This is not to say that expectations are not to be created and met. However, it does mean that the way to reach those expectations must adapt to the culture. The expectations themselves may even need to change. For example, when entering a school leadership position at a new school, one must be self-aware of his or her previous school culture. All schools have their own individual culture, and it is important to discover the characteristics of it without assuming it will be like your own. This period of discovery is especially important when working with individuals from different cultures, and this is nearly always the case in a school setting. When approaching any new cultural setting, whether the setting is a new school within the state, new school in another country, or there are members within the current school from other cultures. A global leader in education takes the time to understand the culture through relationship building and experiential situations. In the selective attention test at the University of Illinois, a person in a gorilla costume stepped into the middle of the screen while participants were asked to observe people passing a basketball. Half of the participants did not notice the gorilla and demonstrated inattentional blindness, showing that if we are not expecting to see something, we will often not see what is right in front of us. The gorilla finds himself unexpectedly in the suburb because of this well-known study. Global leaders must be able to invite the unexpected, like the gorilla, in their current positions. They must be willing to learn and demonstrate flexibility. The global leader is able to manage paradoxes and take on challenges that he has never before experienced. Global leaders must be willing to be children, demonstrating humility and breaking down barriers at the same time. What does this mean for educators? It means we must go ape over learning and embrace the challenge of lifelong learning. We do not stop once we reach the position of assistant principal or principal, and certainly not as superintendent. Despite the very rare occasion when we think we have it all figured out, there is always something to be learned from our colleagues and students, especially those from other cultures. Global leaders in education must ask questions about how to reach our students from various backgrounds, and they must learn the language they speak. We know that our students will need collaboration skills in order to succeed in their future careers. After all, collaboration cannot be outsourced. We also know that students have a hard time with collaborating with people that come from backgrounds other than their own. School leaders need to be models in this classic struggle by learning a second or third language. It is likely that it would be most beneficial to learn Spanish, but school leaders can make this decision based on their population needs. Perhaps you did not expect to have to learn the giant gorilla of another language at this age in order to better reach that failing subpopulation of your school. But invite that unexpected gorilla and you will see success from your students. Let us journey on toward the forest, where we are met with the wolf and the goose. In the forest, we will observe how to close the gap. Now that we have identified the differences found in culture and background, we must close the gap between us and those individuals. The way to do this is through relationship building and frame shifting. Global leaders take responsibility and active measures toward these behaviors. The process is more than uncomfortable, but it must be done. Now that you recognize your leadership style as the outcome of your values, patterns of behavior, and community's ideologies, can you alter this style to bring your organization to success? Let's follow the wolf and the goose to get a better picture of closing the gap. The wolf is our model animal for achieving results through relationships because of its social structure. Wolves rarely invite an outsider to join the pack. On the rare occasion that they do invite an outsider, the new wolf is immature, and it is not seen as a threat to the rest of the pack. When we enter into organizations, we must demonstrate humility and the concept that we are not a threat to the integrity of the organization. If they are not careful to show this from the beginning, global leaders may very well be a threat to the established culture and cohesion of the members within the organization. Like the new wolf in the pack, global leaders must approach all situations with humility and prioritize building relationships if they want to be accepted and make real change. We must intentionally seek personal relationships with staff members for positive outcomes, such as giving feedback and demonstrating empathy. Furthermore, the relationship must come before the task. This is a hard concept to digest for task-oriented leaders, but great global leaders are able to function with either tasks or relationships as their priority. Depending on the culture of the staff members, the difference between these two orientations is crucial. How can educational leaders make a difference with their pack? Humility is pivotal, as is avoiding too much change at the beginning of a new reign in a school. To avoid mistrust from the beginning, global leaders in schools must avoid the wolf in sheep's clothing of totally task-oriented behavior. I am a recovering task-oriented leader myself, and while there's a place for this kind of leadership, the beginning is all about trust. Global leadership requires being aware of what's at stake, and in this case, that means your followers' trust and loyalty. As we strive to be effective in the world of education, there will undoubtedly be several transitions to come. While an individual can be very effective in any position, those that want to make more widespread and fundamental changes will rise to higher positions. This means working with different people and having to adjust the culture of several different campuses or even districts throughout a lifetime. The followers of the leaders in education have to live with the results of their actions for a long time. It is important to convince others of your intentions and goals through relationship building instead of using coercion or compliance. We must take the time for personal conversations and team-building activities with teachers and other staff members if we expect them to trust our vision and be effective in the classroom. Next, we will observe the goose as an animal that has perfected frame shifting. Geese change their course direction depending on their climate. In the winter, they migrate to warmer areas, and they return home in the summer. They are flexible and make adjustments to the situation at hand, and they are able to carry on and be just as productive in a completely different setting. Like the goose, global leaders must be able to alter their perspectives and methods. They must be able to alter communication style and leadership orientation. We as global leaders need to adapt from our Western performance context to styles that accomplish the same goals, yet appeal to all cultures represented. What does it look like to be a frame shifter like the goose in schools? When it comes to frame shifting, rigidness is our cooked goose. Educational leaders must be able to distinguish between staff members with whom direct or indirect communication should be used, what kind of questions to ask followers, and how to confirm commitment from followers. For example, when communicating with a teacher from Latin America, a great global leader knows that indirect communication may be most appropriate. School leaders need to adjust strategies used according to the type of clientele served. We must ask, what is the background of the different subpopulations we are trying to reach? What is effective for students from these backgrounds? For example, when planning parent nights, are we choosing a time frame that suits the majority of the undocumented working class? Great global leaders in schools make the appropriate adjustments, despite the costs, in order to increase student success. We will now visit the garden, where we will observe animals while they open the system. After the gaps have been closed between leaders and their followers, global leaders must share ownership to team members and develop future leaders for the organization. Let's take a look at how the ant and the spider operate to achieve these goals within their own systems. The ant is our model for expanding ownership because of its engagement in a shared process. Ants work as a unit to gather food, build nests, dig tunnels, and even form a raft when water levels are high. Ants overcome their obstacles by working together, and they think toward the future as they forage for food for the next generation. They have a clear leader, the queen, but all take ownership of the tasks at hand. They know that they must work together to keep the colony in good health. Like ants, global leaders must engage in a shared process and work as a team toward the goals of the organization. Each follower of a global leader has a part in the decision-making process and has a venue for sharing ideas. All members of a global organization have sufficient support, yet they are held accountable for achieving set standards. Followers of global leaders exercise freedom, yet they stay within their boundaries while working toward the collaborative goal. How can global leaders in education expand ownership in schools? They lead their fellow ants by marching in as a team. School leaders should focus on strengthening their core teams and widen the scope of those who are facilitating change. This is the only way to create real, lasting change. An important task of a school leader is to empower his followers. For example, school leaders can involve all staff in decisions throughout the year through anonymous surveys. Another example may be asking teachers to be responsible for at least one extracurricular activity of their choice. Additionally, team leaders could be asked on a regular basis for suggestions for improvement school-wide, with accompanied action plans and input from their team members. An action research team could be formed to see firsthand the results of certain initiatives on campus. These are steps toward decentralizing authority and extending ownership. The effects of steps like these are both short-term and long-term. A centralized approach is self-defeating and does not promote morale. However, action toward empowerment will trickle down and lead to empowering students, which should be one of our top goals. Our students today need instant gratification and lack social responsibility. Let us empower them to be the agents of change that society will require in the future. Our model animal for developing future leaders is the spider because of its spider sense. While this may not be as sharp as Spider-Man's precognitive sense of danger, the real spider can have up to 8 eyes to allow it to know what is coming. It also has sensitive hairs covering its body that perceive low-level vibrations from the ground or even the air. Spider sense means sensing what is coming in the future and acting upon it. Like the spider with its spider sense, global leaders must see the future of their organization. The most important part of this future is who will serve as leaders in it. Leaders must identify followers that have the potential to be great global leaders in the future of the organization. They must take action on this. The goal of a global leader should be to make himself irrelevant and empower those in leadership positions. This leads to the independence and the genuine inspiration necessary for long-term growth in an organization. However, many organizations are unable to attract these outstanding leaders initially. This means that organizations must focus on leader development and turn followers into effective performers. How can school leaders have spider sense and build up those who can effectively lead in the future? Here is some great news. There is no need to wait for the spider to come home. Global leaders in education can assure themselves of great leadership in the future of their school or district. The key is empowerment. A unique quality about the field of education is our goal includes not only empowering our organization's leaders, but it also includes empowering our clients or our students. To begin, school leaders must be approachable so they can more effectively coach future leaders of the school. A large part of approachability involves the humility that was referenced earlier. Leaders who are able to admit their mistakes decrease the distance between them and their followers, and they are viewed as more likable. Empowering future school leaders also requires action, however. An important action global leaders in schools must take is to provide effective feedback to followers. This feedback must include an action plan and highlight the strengths of the individual. Many schools only utilize action plans with teachers who are achieving poor results, but the affected teachers need them as well. Providing action plans is beneficial for several reasons. It provides an opportunity for teachers to give you feedback as well, and it shows that you are trying to help their career. This further generates commitment and inspiration on the part of the followers. We will now travel to the Galapagos Islands, where we find a balance of a variety of wildlife. We have observed animals that know how to adapt to their environment. However, there are environments where, while being adaptable is necessary, animals must remain firm. We will observe the howler monkey as an animal that both adapts and adds value, and we will observe the penguin as an animal that demonstrates core values and flexibility. The howler monkey is our model animal for adapting and adding value. The howlers of the Galapagos know the importance of effective communication. Howlers send clear messages about occupied territory and how things are done. Monkeys are naturally intelligent. They make decisions based on expertise, such as choosing non-toxic leaves to eat by color. Monkeys are social animals that invest in foundational things like relationships in order to be successful. Howler monkeys spend time playing, but they know when it is time to focus in order to search for food or migrate. Global leaders achieve a balance between adapting and adding value like the howler monkey. They adapt in communication and leadership style. However, they clearly communicate standards, and they expect these standards to be met. Global leaders make decisions based on their expertise, and they are able to prove the value they add to the organization. They allow for creativity and fun within the workplace, yet they hold high standards in all members of the organization accountable for their tasks. What does a balance between adapting and adding value mean for a leader in education? It means there is no monkey business, most of the time. Leaders in schools must model and expect implementation of strategies that lead to success, efficient use of classroom time, effective classroom management, and delivery of strong curriculum on a daily basis. Administrators must hold teachers, professional staff, and non-professional staff accountable for their responsibilities, and they must not assume that actions are taking place. After all, the globally leading principal whose school achieves poor results must take responsibility for the performance. This means that he or she must address problem areas with departments or individual teachers, and hard decisions must be made. However, global leaders in education must keep in mind the style used to address problems and appeal to the culture of the individual or school. They also must be flexible and have long-term goals in mind. This may look like allowing teachers to pursue professional development or even occasional personal development opportunities that remove them from the classroom. It could also mean organizing fun activities for the staff as opportunities to release stress and focus on their relationships at school. Next, we will observe the penguin as the model of core values and flexibility. Penguins are flexible when they need to be. They can move quickly on land and in water, and they are not thrown off by a lack of landmarks when navigating. However, there are some ways in which penguins are inflexible. They mate for life, and most penguins share the task of incubating their eggs with their mate. They hold to these core values despite temptations like leaving the egg to seek warmth or finding another mate. However, they see rewards in the end, such as a healthy baby penguin. Like the penguin, global leaders must demonstrate both core values and flexibility. They must respect the values of the culture within which the organization operates and switch between leadership styles, but the core values of global leaders remain despite the circumstances. The global leader must identify his or her personal values, such as fairness, integrity, respect, honesty, effective feedback, openness, allegiance to common goals, rational allocation of organizational resources, and adherence to the law. After identifying these values, the global leader must demonstrate them consistently in his personal and professional life despite temptations that arise. How do core values and flexibility apply to leadership and education? Leaders who demonstrate core values can fall back on this nest egg time and time again. Core values are crucial to long-term stability and performance in a school. We must not only model core values, but we must also coach for consistent demonstration of values in teachers and other staff members. We must help staff members practice who they want to be in a certain situation. It is not easy to be steadfast regarding core values, especially in schools. However, global leaders in education must accept that not everyone within the school will be happy with decisions that lead toward common goals, and they must stick to these decisions. I believe fairness and allegiance to common goals may be the most important core values in education. Leading teachers and other school staff members is much like teaching in the classroom. A school leader must be consistent and unyielding with non-negotiable policies, or pay for it forever after. For example, a principal must address staff members who arrive at school late, even if it is a teacher who has high-performing students and is normally at school on time. We do not accept excuses or exceptions from good students who arrive to class late, and we should hold all teachers accountable in the same way. An additional example is, there will always be teachers who are unhappy with their class schedule for the school year. However, there is always a big picture in master scheduling that benefits the students in the end. Teachers cannot be given preference, or the common goal of student performance is jeopardized. The last stop on our voyage is the lake, where we will examine establishing solutions. Global leaders must produce results, and they must solve complex issues in order to do so. We will observe the big fish as an animal with influence across boundaries, and we will see how the crow develops third-way solutions. The big fish is our model animal, as one who has influence across boundaries. A leader who is charged with global responsibility is a bigger fish in a foreign pond. The big fish of the lake has great power, but it has great responsibility as well. Global leaders have expanded roles, and they must have expertise in several different areas of the organization. They must be creative in these various roles and serve as a representative of the entire organization. In the same way, organizations are a reflection of their global leaders. How must leaders in schools act as a big fish in a foreign pond? These leaders are given bigger fish to fry. Global leaders in education often find themselves with more responsibilities than they originally anticipated. The principal is not just a principal. He or she is a leader of school staff, the expert of instructional strategies, the supporter of the community, the head of the budget committee, and more. The school counselor is not only responsible for the academic, career, and personal and social area of students' lives. He or she must work with and teach parents, manage testing responsibilities, manage scheduling, distribute scholarship information, and more. Global leaders in schools must be willing to accept a greater amount of responsibility, and they must seek the opportunities that their various roles represent. For example, the school counselor that is bogged down with testing responsibilities can take pride in her work as a way to ensure a comfortable testing environment for the students, or as a way to get to know teachers better through training and individual concerns that arise. The principal that is barraged with communication from the community can use his contacts to seek cross-cultural or mentoring opportunities for students. Great global leaders are able to learn and unlearn as appropriate for the roles they take on. They see their various roles as opportunities to learn and have a greater impact on student success. So jump into that lake, you big fish out there, and seize the opportunities. The last animal we will observe is the crow, and we will be examining its resourcefulness and its use of third-way solutions. The crow looks beyond obvious solutions. It turns a vast variety of objects into useful tools for getting food from places that are difficult to reach. They are omnivores, and they collaborate with other crows to obtain food. Crows are great communicators. They can mimic words in full sentences. The crow also learns new skills from older crows and has great respect for these elders. Like the crow, global leaders must look for solutions that go beyond those that have been used before, or those that seem easy and obvious. They must be willing to use resources that others have avoided, and they must be willing to learn new skills from others. Global leaders must communicate well, and they must share information between headquarters and global followers. Perhaps the most important part about generating solutions is being transparent throughout the entire process. This includes transparency about assumptions and expectations of followers, and it involves transparency in the actions of the global leader. How will it look for global leaders in education to use third-way solutions? Leaders that seek and utilize third-way solutions will be able to crow about their student performance. School leaders can meet with teams across campus to brainstorm and discuss possibilities that may seem unordinary or risky. Global leaders of schools must be able to present well the needs and concerns on their campus to the district office, and they must be able to articulate the boundaries and policies presented by district administration to teachers and other staff on campus. They must be aware of best practices in instruction and communicate these well to department leaders. Teachers must also be held accountable for these practices, as their implementation is required today. It is no longer simply an advantage for a particular school. As global leaders in education, we must strive to be the dog, gorilla, wolf, goose, ant, spider, monkey, penguin, fish, crow, a combination that encompasses each of these 10 behaviors. The underlying theme in all of these behaviors is future orientation. In looking toward the future, we must push for the instruction of non-routine analytic skills and non-routine interactive skills. Our students must be able to apply their skills and knowledge in future settings in order to be successful. They must be able to weigh different perspectives, initiate investigations, communicate and collaborate effectively, and translate their ideas into effective solutions. Our goal in education is current and future success for students, so we must design all initiatives and school structures around these goals. When we can consistently deliver support for our teachers and equity for our students, the future will be very bright indeed. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Let us convert our observations from today into best practices in our own natural environment, the public school.